good. All right, so first question. Can you please state your name, spell it, where you work, and your position?
Sure. I'm Lucian Benway. That's Lucianbenway. I work here at Athletics as the head boxing coach.
Head boxing coach, okay. You know, like when you watch an interview, there's that little bar underneath that says their name. That's what that's for. So to start, when did you get into boxing, and how did you get into it?
Oh man, I got into boxing, I believe it was late 2000, in the middle of 2007. And yeah, as a child, I had done Taekwondo, and I played sports my entire life. Thing was, Taekwondo and all the sports are pretty expensive, so I had to choose between playing a sport each season and being able to do Taekwondo. So as I became older, I kind of phased out the Taekwondo and stayed active through high school. When I finished high school, I didn't really have an outlet. I took a few years off before going to college. My father was a kickboxer at the time and was an avid weightlifter, so I decided to go to the gym with him. And the gym that we went to, the bottom floor was all weightlifting equipment, and then the top floor had some other conditioning stuff, and then there's a boxing room. So I finished my workout with my dad, and he, of course, killed me. He was still working out the entire time, so I was like, okay, well, I need to find something else to do. So I went upstairs. There was no one in the boxing room. So I found some boxing gloves. I was like, yeah, we can try this. And I started hitting the heavy bag. And as I was hitting the heavy bag, the boxing coach came in. And he just kind of sat back and watched me box and waited for me to tire out, which at that time, after taking a couple years off not doing anything, was like 45 seconds probably, And we had a nice conversation. He actually jumped in the ring and ended up working with me for a better part of half hour to an hour, if I remember correctly. And I was instantly hooked. It was within that time I was like, wow, I really don't know anything about this, how to do this correctly, and it just intrigued me, and I was instantly hooked. And then I was competing 6 months later at Golden Gloves.
Wow.
Yeah.
I guess that leads into one of the next questions. When did you decide it was time to do the Golden Gloves competition, and did you ever do it before the time that you won?
Yeah, so going into those times training with Coach Bob, I knew that I loved boxing, and when we started sparring, and he told me I had a natural talent. I felt like I was decent at it, but I knew I had a long way to go. And traditionally, you have guys that are coming up they take some matches before the Golden Gloves. Well, for whatever reason, whether it was time constraints or not being able to travel, Golden Gloves are coming up in late January, and it's coming up to the end of the year, and I was in good enough shape, he thought, to compete, and there wasn't enough time to take a match before then, so we decided that my first match would be in Golden Gloves. And so I didn't compete prior to Golden Gloves, but I did compete 1 year prior to actually winning the championship.
Okay, so you did it one more time before 2009?
Yeah, so I competed. I had my first match at Golden Gloves. It was the first round of the tournament. I won my fight. I was super excited, and semifinals came up, and I lost by a split decision. And I thought I won the match, of course, but it was a tough fight. There's a lot of good guys there, and so I had a full year to train and compete. And then the following year, we came up and we won every match.
Awesome. So, I just want to get a pause real quick.
Sorry.
Oh no, it's no problem.
I'm not sure how long that's going to stay on.
Sorry, I just want to get a short clip of it, just that sound, so that later in editing I can add this sound in the background when it's not there. So it's in the system. That should be good. Yeah, that's just getting room noise, so we can
All right.
fix it in post. So, what is your most memorable moment that you can think of out of your entire boxing career besides winning Golden Gloves?
I think the most memorable moment that I have for my time in boxing is actually the time that I spent right before my championship match with my father. So for me, traditionally, I like to be by myself when I'm preparing for a match. I don't like anybody to be around. I want to warm up by myself in the corner, away from everybody, hoodie on, thinking about my game plan, thinking about the things I've worked on with my coach. And right before the match, my father took me aside and he told me that it didn't matter whether I won or lost, that he was proud of me. And for whatever reason it was, that moment right there has stuck with me because that took all the edge off. And I knew going into that match that it didn't matter. I had my mind set to win that match, and I had a mission, had a game plan, and having my dad there in my corner and say those things to me, I think that is the one thing that really set me up for success in that match, and that's stuck with me to this day.
Awesome. So, what was the process like for you getting to this championship game? So, what worked in your favor and what didn't?
Things that worked in my favor and things that didn't, it's a lot, right? At the time, I was a full-time college student. I was working full-time, and I was trying to schedule in time to train full-time as well, right? As you know, Sean, it takes a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of hours in the gym, blood, sweat, tears, whatever you want to call it, to make these things work. So things that worked well for me, I had a very disciplined mother, and my father was always 100% supportive. So I had literally, when I was competing, for the several years I was competing, I planned out every single day that I had, hour by hour, whether it was for transit time, whether it was for class time, whether it was for work time, whether it was for gym time. And then with my gym times, I had all my workouts scheduled for me, and I had all my training sessions scheduled out as well. So being very diligent and just staying on top of it and disciplined, that worked really well for me. Things that didn't work well for me, life, right? Things happen. Coaches can't make it to training schedules. You wake up and you're trying to work through an injury. I tore one of the connecting tissues in my rib cage one year doing some weighted decline sit-ups. So things always get in the way, and you gotta find a way to work through them. But unfortunately, you can't count. You can't see everything coming, right? So life is the hardest one, and I think that's true for every boxer and every competitor, whether you're boxing or you're doing hockey or baseball or even golf, right? You can't foresee every problem. So
Now, did you do Golden Gloves after the year that you won the championship?
I did, yeah. I competed for one more year after that. Came in and defended my title. I lost in the championship. I had a really tough. I thought it went really smoothly in the first round. The second round, I had a really tough match. Guy was really good. Luckily, my coach was an awesome strategist at the time, and we figured out a game plan in round 2 and pushed through, won the next 2 rounds after losing the first round. And then the championship fight, was a really good guy from Springfield, Vermont. He had been competing for a couple of years. We had been seeing each other eye to eye. I think if I remember correctly, he had been in a lower weight class. He came up to challenge me, and that fight was back and forth. And at the end of the match, I wasn't sure if I won. I thought that I won, but I also knew that I could have done better. And he edged me out, and I competed for the rest of the year. And then, unfortunately, I had a falling out with my coach, and some other life things happened, and I got a different job, and so I wasn't able to fit the training schedule in that I needed to, and so I stopped competing. But when I stopped competing, I stayed with the boxing team, started helping out some of the newer guys, and became the conditioning coach for the team.
Cool.
Yeah.
Can you describe the difference between a regular boxing match and a Golden Gloves match?
The difference between a regular match and a Golden Gloves match is the energy, right? Like you're sitting in the middle of a ring, looking around. There's people on 3 sides of you, and then behind you, depending on what corner you're in, the blue or the red corner, there's got all of the other boxers and boxing teams looking at you. So you're literally surrounded by hundreds of people. I think there was at least a couple hundred people for my first boxing match, right? And then when you think about that going down to like, say, Springfield or some other place, you'd be lucky if there's 100 people in there. And you're fighting in like a gymnasium, or you're fighting in some other, small boxing gym in the inner city somewhere. So the energy, the feel, and then everything, that Golden Gloves that's your go time, right? Like, we prepare with those gym fights throughout the year, but Golden Gloves is where it's all at. You're putting that entire year on the line for those 3 matches.
Have you thought about going professional after, training for so long and doing competitions? I mean, you've been doing it for, 10 years now? Is it? So, have you ever thought about going a step further?
Yeah, the thought about competing professionally was something that was in the back of my mind for a long time. But the problem, as a professional boxer, you sacrifice so much, and it could take 10 years to build up a career where you can sustain and have a family and have a life, right? For me, it's not about the risk of brain injury or concussion, because we're athletes, we compete, we know the risk when we go in. It's our job to protect ourselves and to do what we can to get through that. But to gamble my life as a kid from suburban Vermont, to move to a city and to try to compete as a professional fighter, for me, that was just giving up too much. It was giving up school. It was giving up, the possibility of a professional career in the business world. And it was also, leaving my family and my friends. I've grew up in Vermont. I've stayed in Vermont pretty much my entire life, traveled a lot, but always came back here. So to leave that support network and my family is just too much. Yeah.
So I should get back to my list of questions now. So what was the semifinals like? What was going through your mind as you were moving up the tournament board? Like, what was your thought process? How were you feeling?
The semifinals, my championship year, I felt really good. I was lucky enough to have not only my boxing coach who did all my strategy stuff, but I was also lucky enough to have a kickboxing coach who did all my conditioning and my strength work. So I was in probably the best shape of my life. Going into the semifinals, I felt like, we can compete 2-3 times a night, it doesn't matter. And if I remember correctly, and it was a long time ago, but there's nothing about that match that I think back on that ever felt really hard. And I say that not to diminish an opponent or the experience of being in the ring, because it's extremely hard work once you're in there. But there are things that you remember about each fight where you're like, oh, I really had to change up my game plan, and I had to switch something up. I noticed something about them they were catching me on something, and I just don't see anything like that. I think for the most part we went out with a positive game plan, and everything went as planned, fortunately enough.
So, how did you prepare for the final fight? What was, your game plan?
Box, and preparing for any fight, we're looking at everything that we've done through the past years. The finals is a little different because you can have 1 to 2 fights to look at your opponent and break them down a little bit, right? So we would film our opponents or the other people in the weight class, and we'd take some time on the day after Sunday to look at how they competed and their movement, and see if we could pick apart some things. Maybe they weren't moving correctly laterally, left or right. Maybe they dropped their jab after they threw it. And just looking for those little openings, and then taking Sunday after the film day to rest, and then the next 2-3 days trying to add those pieces of strategy to our game plan. So working those in the ring with our coach, working the mitts, just trying to really stay fresh. Once you come into the first match of Golden Gloves, all the hard work has been done at that point. You're not going to gain any extra strength or conditioning within those 3 weeks. So it's really just your job to stay healthy, stay uninjured, and to stay warm and fresh through those 3 weeks if you make it all the way to the end.
What was how many hours of training were you putting in? What was your diet plan? Like, what was like all the, I guess in a film term, the pre-production? What did that look like?
Preparation for any boxing match is incredibly intense. Some guys like to train, certain parts of the year. Some guys like to stay at a heavier weight and then cut weight down to what they needed to. I'm a person who I want to stay consistent throughout the entire process, and I want to always be within my fight weight, within a couple pounds, 3-4 pounds at the most. So diet-wise, hasn't actually changed that much for me today, except for I've gained a little weight, I've gotten heavier, I've gotten stronger, so I need a little more protein, more fats, a little more carbohydrates to sustain me, but staying very lean, staying clean, trying to eat whole foods. And then workout-wise, that was me fitting in a couple workouts in a day, whether it was 1 to 2 hour blocks of time. So I had 2 gyms that I went to, one that was on campus, and that I would squeeze in workouts in between classes where I could. Then other blocks of time I would study in between those classes, and then I'd make my way in the evening 5 days a week to go see my boxing coach and work strategy and work things with him in the gym. So at least 5 days a week, one session was doing strength and conditioning by myself or with my other trainer, and then every evening was with my coach or my teammates, either doing sparring or strategizing, trying to work in new skills to add to our toolbox. And then of course weekends, depending on how sore you are, if you can get in a Saturday or Sunday workout, great. But as we know, as personal trainers and coaches, that recovery is the most important piece of this. So learning to take those recovery times as needed as well.
So, so lastly, how different do you think things would be for you right now if you didn't win?
How different do I think things would be for me if I didn't win? I'm not sure. Because if I hadn't won that year, you can bet that I would have kept continuing until I did win. So if it wasn't that following year, it would have been the year after. So that would have changed the entire trajectory of, what I did as a coach after that, right? The guys that I've helped win Golden Gloves, the guys that I've helped propel towards a professional career. There's been a couple guys that I've done that with. The role that I took on as a personal trainer and the conditioning coach, that would have affected all of that. So who knows, right? I'm glad that I won, and I'm glad that I was able to impact the community in a successful and appropriate way in the following years. But to have another 2-3 years of really striving and having that as your brass ring, who knows? But I think in the end, I probably would have ended up in a similar role as I am now, as a personal trainer and coach, and helping people better themselves in all aspects, hopefully, in their lives.
I just had a follow-up question and then I lost it.
Pull it out, Sean. Pull it out. Pull it out.
Oh man, what was it? Oh yeah, so like going forward from now, right now you're a personal trainer and you teach boxing classes. Do you want to say 5-10 years from now, do you want that to still be the case, or what do you want to progress towards in the coming years, with your career and boxing?
How do I want this to progress? Right now, I'm looking towards getting another certification. I'm training a guy at the Golden Gloves right now, an older guy, super hardworking guy, never boxed a day in his life. So we're working really hard with him 4 days a week to make him into the boxer we need him to be to win and be successful. But really, I enjoy being in the gym. I enjoy putting in the work myself, whether it's late nights, like the other night I came in at 9-10 o'clock at night and just dimmed the lights and did a nice heavy bag workout, or this morning getting up at 6 a.m. and getting a solid boxing workout before I took a strength and conditioning class and then taught class after. I just enjoy being a part of the community, and boxing at this point is such an integral part of my life that I'm always going to be doing it, whether it's tomorrow or when I'm 80 years old and have a heavy bag in my garage, barely moving around, trying to just get some punches in, you know. But you take that and you couple it with my skills as a personal trainer and as an actual boxing coach and as a conditioning coach, and you pair all those things together and you have a really good opportunity to affect people in a positive way and to help other people be successful in all aspects of their life. So whether I end up moving somewhere and opening up my own gym, or I stay here working at athletics on outside of my normal 9-to-5 job, those are both okay with me as long as we can have a positive impact on the people that we surround ourselves with, or who choose to surround us with them. So.
Have you ever thought about getting back into competing, whether it be Golden Gloves or a different competition?
I have thought about getting back into competing, and it's actually been something that's been really sitting on my mind the last couple of years. My competition weight was 132 pounds. I'm about 162 right now. I guess some weight to cut. I don't think I can get back down that low, but I think about 152 pounds, I'd stay really strong and I'd be really competitive. The thing is that so much of my time right now is devoted to teaching classes here. I teach 4 boxing classes a week. I have 2 to 3 personal training clients I see, so that's 7 to 8 sessions a week. I have a full-time job, a full-time desk job, where I work in a corporate office 5 days a week. So there's not a lot of, very lucky to have a girlfriend that I'm pretty serious with. So, and I have a dog named Floyd, 8 months old. So being able to balance that is super tricky. And at this point in time, if I made the decision to compete, then I would have to back off on one part of my life or the other. And I'm just not comfortable with that, because I think that I'm doing some pretty good work, and that as important as self-growth and those goals are, something like competing it's a selfish thing, right? It's a selfish thing, and if it's not going to benefit at this point in my life, if it's not going to benefit the people that I'm around in a positive way, then I'm not going to choose to do it. So if we can, if I can find another coach and bring someone in and keep everything else in good standing and be able to still devote my time to other people in the way that I like to, then absolutely. I still have a couple years in me, and right now I'm strength-wise and conditioning-wise, I'm in the best shape of my life. So there's nothing really stopping me outside of time to get back in the ring.
Awesome. So I had one more. I did it again. Oh, yeah. Because of that noise earlier, I was wondering if you could just retell the story, in case I'm not able to fix that audio, of your favorite moment. I was wondering if you could just retell that real quick, because I don't know if I'm going to be able to fix that or not.
Sure. Stay off. Yeah, so probably the most memorable moment that I had in my boxing career was actually before the championship match. Me prepping before a match, I like to be by myself. I like to do my shadow boxing by myself. I like to take that time alone to really look inside myself and think about the game plan, the skill sets that we've gone through, the different movements, and really just get myself focused and set up. Before the championship match, I was doing that, and right before we walked up, my dad pulled me aside and said, "Look, no matter how it goes in there, I'm proud of you." And for me, that was huge. As my father walking into the ring with me, and for whatever reason, that made the outcome of that match okay, regardless of what it was, and that took all the pressure off. And I had my game plan. I knew what I was going to go in and do. I knew I knew that we had to win that match, and I wanted that. But knowing that my dad had my back 100% like that meant the world to me. And we went in and did work.
that's gonna be it